The candle's flame flickered in the still evening air, dancing on the most imperceptible of air currents, and bringing forth life to the normally still shadows on the stark stone walls. An undercurrent of gloom and despair clung to the floor like a sick fog, invisible, cloying, foul, and putrid. Evil had set root within this room, and taken hold of all that entered. In the farthest corner from the door, on a pallet of thin dry straw, Lilith sat in her finery. Her couture was starkly out of place, and clashed heavily with rest of the room's tawdry furnishings. She did not belong to this place, and it took but the most casual of glances to make such an observation. Her countenance and carriage gave one the impression of an expensive porcelain doll stashed carefully out of sight from prying eyes. Lilith looked down at her body, now partly exposed as she removed her bodice and skirts, to expose her foundation garments. Her black and red silk Merry Widow gleamed in the thin reedy light of the candle. Her alabaster skin was as unmarked and pure as fresh fallen snow, and her trim lithe body was marred only by a single fault. Her stomach bulged slightly from the life growing within it, a life that had to be ended before the evil within her was born forth. Her mind raced as she remembered the grotesque worry of him embedding his seed within her. His dark soul and evil essence filling her mind and body simultaneously in an act so divinely performed that it could only be termed perfect evil. He had raped her body and soul in a single act, and left enough of himself behind to ensure his continued existence in the life that seethed within her. She had not known that a child of Nosferatu could perform such an act, and had naively believed that her pureness of heart protected her. Now, rudely educated, she knew how childishly she had behaved and how foolishly she had acted. Alas, in the tragedy that was to be her life story, there was but a single act left to play. She turned the ivory-handled surgeon's knife in her hands, watching its silvered blade glimmer in the dim unsteady light. She had traded all that she had owned to secure this specific blade. It was rumored to be the knife carried by Jack the Ripper, and used to murder and dissect his 11 victims. On the streets of Whitechapel its razor-keen edge had slit their throats, before mutilating their genitals, and removing their organs. The blade had touched more than one womb, and laid it bare of life and breath. It would know how to find one more. Of this fact she was sure. Though now she was penniless, it would not matter in but a few more moments. She would be liberated, and free to pursue an alternative destiny in an existence where one's only wealth was measured by one's soul. By ending this life her soul would be cleansed of her travesty, and the weight of its evil chains removed. One fast thrust and her misery would be over. One quick jab, and the unborn would be born into death, and then not undead. Its bloodlusts never to quicken, and its sucking mouth never to taste a human's warm wine-tinged nectar. That she would go with it to the afterlife was fitting. Though evil through and through, because of its father, the child and its soul would be purified by the touch of the blade. Once unburdened and cleansed, the infant would need a guide in the next life, and its mother was the right person for the task. She looked up as a shadow filled the door. It was him. Somehow he had found her, and was here for his child. She still had time. She looked up at him, beautiful, seductive, sensuous, and defiant. Her eyes shone with the brightness of 2 suns. Her aura expanded, as though it had gone over, growing larger and stronger than any he had ever seen in all the centuries he had strode the night. He wheeled, and it was too late. Her ruby lips parted one last time, though not for a kiss, as she sighed with her last breath, "You are denied." The blade drove deep and hard into her womb, and the blood flowed freely. Though he yearned always for its bitter flavor, the red stream flowing from his concubine and child did not arouse his appetites. He turned and walked from the room. He would find another, and begin again. He had all eternity, and sooner or later one of his progeny would rise to join him in the ranks of the vampire. Paris, Exposition 1900. Baron Faustus Moreau was vexed by the death of his unborn progeny. To have one of his consorts turn upon him in such an irritating and rudely inconsiderate act was something to which he was not accustomed. Her manners were approachable, her attitude obnoxious, and her subservience virtually non-existent. It was time to move on from the colonial backwaters of New York to a world where his toys were better bred. Thus, the Dark One turned his attentions to the elegance of the old country. He cast his gaze upon the most majestic of cities, and voyaged east by clipper ship on a mid-September passage. It was the turn of the century in time to return to his homeland. The Paris Exposition of 1900 proved to be a rich and abundant feeding ground. Vast numbers of young lovers, seeking to escape the prying eyes of chaperones and guardians, would walk down the barge towpaths on the sides of the Seine, hidden from view by the high ironstone walls. He ate well and sumptuously that season, enjoying the warm sweet vital fluid of many belles filles and their beaux. His favorite meals were to be had beneath the Petit Pont, where the well-heeled students of the Sorbonne were plentiful. The upper-class girls were particularly satisfying, as he could partake of some manly pleasures before imbibing their life's essence. The deep murky water and strong riverine currents conveniently disposed of the bloodless and mutilated cadavers, and thus prevented detection of his nocturnal activities. Their screams and whimpers, moans and gasps were the symphony of his meals. Some would try to oppose him in futile opposition, unknowing of the vast strength within his body. These he casually broke and maimed, torturing only the most rebellious, before his teeth sought their firm necks. A few of the more attractive women, in whom erotic desire was stronger than primal fear, were permitted to live. Under the charm of his glamour, they would return regularly to him, bringing new male companions to whet his appetites, and offering of themselves for his pleasures. He found one, Gabrielle, to have particularly exquisite skills and desires. She would forever have a place in his heart and his bed, for she alone was worthy of taking home to enjoy. It was one of the most pleasant summers that he could remember, and though his victims must have tallied a century, he escaped notice and attention. While the Exposition had lasted for but a season, the Edwardian era within England had brought prosperity and gaiety to all of Europe. He enjoyed many years within the old city, lunching with artists such as Lautrec and Matisse beneath the Sacré-Cœur. He witnessed Blériot perform the first significant air voyage across the Channel, and enjoyed many relaxing evenings within the Moulin Rouge. Of particular interest to him was the opening of the metro with its darkened underground tunnels, where one could dine and relax surrounded by cool comforting earth. He heard the music of Debussy, and ravel at the opera, finding such venues to provide a superior grade of flesh for his consumption and amusement. Though war with the Kaiser had been looming on the horizon for many years, it became increasingly inevitable, and was sure to commence within a few years. Dead soldiers and starving civilians made for a poor plate, and would not provide him the luxuries and pleasures to which he had become accustomed. His visits to the opera had shifted his tastes from nubile young women to more mature ladies of substance. The deaths of such women were harder to hide, though for him, it was not impossible, causing him to shift from meals of quantity to meals of quality. The opening of a millinery boutique in 1910 by his former doll, Gabrielle, now calling herself Mademoiselle Coco, had caused a stir amidst the upper classes that increased the flow of gossip, and was making it harder to escape notice. Her past association with him, though erotically satisfying, brought the chance of undesired attention. It was these events that saw the Dark One book passage back to New York upon the largest and most impressive luxury liner ever to sail the seas. With anticipation he looked forward to an ocean voyage, where the deep waters of the Atlantic would erase any traces of his activities. A rare smile graced his face as he boarded the RMS Titanic on his return to America. He had a feeling that the voyage was going to be quite pleasant indeed.